These are the top kingmakers. James Baker, and worked for George W. Bush's re-election campaign against Al Gore. His record underscores the fact that he is one of the most deeply connected men in intelligence circles over the past 3 decades. He's Jack Ryan, folks. It just goes on and on. This is insane. And everything he says fits into my research and all the other experts I'm talking to. Hamid Gul's agreeing, former head of Pakistani intelligence, General Gul, Webster Tarpley, Wayne Madsen, NSA. But I know I'm ranting, sir. I apologize. I want to get into some of the other issues you wanted to cover today, but since we talked 24 hours ago, or 22 hours ago to be technical, this is clearly blowing up in their face. Do you agree, and how dangerous are these cornered rats now?
Well, I think, when you tell a lie, you're going to unwind that lie by the very fact that you've created a lie. The nature of creating a lie in psychological warfare is that you have to be consistent, make sure that all the details are intertwined and are credible. It's almost like a movie. So you got to think of the President of the United States, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mullen, who, by the way, his father was a publicist for the William Morris Agency, and in the intelligence community, it's not an accident that you have this entirely contrived story. It's not credible. It's just like you had Disneyland with a key character who was already dead. And in order to reaffirm the storyline, that is to make sure that the President of the United States looked good, a man like Axelrod, all his advisors, including Obama himself, was particularly suited to the lie, distortions, and deception because that's how he came to power. That's how George Bush Jr. comes to power. He sits down with a bunch of his own cronies. They sit down in groupthink, which you talked about before on your radio. Every one of the national security advisors who have their roles there because they're bequeathed and they're sycophants to the president. They're all kowtowing down, come together, and create this fictional story in psychological warfare that makes no sense. And many of the present people in psychological warfare were never trained 20, 30 years ago because they didn't understand the psychology, they don't understand the anthropology, they don't understand that the American public, you do not psyops the American public. That was a rule of thumb that we had under 4 to 5 presidents, that if you tried to psyops the American public, and it broke when you had George Bush Jr., when he created the psychological warfare, and then created the 9/11 through deception, distortion, false flag, stand down. And then we had, before him, we had Lyndon Baines Johnson. It goes on both sides when he created distortion of a false flag in the Gulf of Tonkin. We went into the war in Vietnam, and we had FDR, as Donald Rumsfeld stupidly accused and said that if anybody like Pieczenik is accusing the Republicans of creating 9/11, Rumsfeld said this on public, September 12th. On 2011, he said, 2001, he said, Steve Pieczenik, if he accuses us, the Republicans, of 9/11, then we have to accuse Franklin Roosevelt of doing a stand-down. Well, of course I accused him of doing a stand-down because Paul Wolfowitz, the neocon, Salme Khalilzad, Frank Fukuyama, you had Dennis Ross, you had Richard Pearl, and you had Scooter Libby, all trained at the University of Chicago under Woolstetter. And what was their topic? Stand down and false flag in Pearl Harbor at the University of Chicago when I was at MIT. So what happens now? What happens now when you've distorted the story and you can't get a consistency, just as we saw in George Bush Jr., which was, well, we have weapons of mass destruction. Suddenly there's a reality testing. There is no weapons of mass destruction. Then suddenly the military, our formidable military, our generals, and our Army generals in particular are forced to change their intelligence in order to be consistent with the White House. But thank God for a lot of our CIA operatives who were not on contract, who would be career and refused to listen to Bush Jr. and to the bullying of Cheney. But today, unfortunately, 80% of our CIA now are mercenaries. They do not have analysis intel. They're really they're detailed off from special forces. And
well, sir, that's what I want to stop you, Doctor, and continue. But that's what Ray McGovern. I don't know if you knew him, but he was the morning briefer for Reagan and Bush Senior. Did you know him?
No, I knew of him. I didn't.
Yeah. Well, Ray says the same thing. He says they can't even do real national security assessments anymore because it's all la-la land. And once you put a psyop out into the public, the way the human brain works and all individuals being limited in their perception, it then is taken back and received by your own system, and it basically for lack of a better word, makes the military-industrial complex drink their own Kool-Aid.
Well, it's not only the military-industrial complex. By the way, it's very important for the public to understand this. I am not a hero. I'm not this great individual. I'm just a simple American who was grateful for the benefits I was given and earned in terms of the ability to serve my country and at the same time be in the only country where I could criticize my own president and still work for them and be so loyal to my country because I was willing to go online and particularly serve my military, our Army generals in particular, the Army colonels, and be teaching at the War College every year. That's a privilege for me.
No, I understand, Dr. Paeczenik.
Alex does, but I have to understand the public. I'm not some superhero. I'm the same guy that your father is, who's a dentist or a mechanic out there, or an Army lieutenant or a junior officer, because they stood for something they believed in. I am tired of the American public being told these lies. I thought it would stop with 9/11. Now we have Obama. Now let's get back to the issue. What happens when the PSYOPs, which was poorly constructed...
You were talking about where they get their CIA people and that most of the intelligence is run by private mercs.
Correct. They get the intelligence people from all the military-industrial complex, L3 Communication, Northrop Grumman. Any of these companies around the Washington Beltway will provide intelligence for you right away because they want those contracts. Now, remember, America, and particularly the Alex Jones audience, supporting our national security does not mean supporting our military-industrial complex. It is not the same thing. They are out of control. They have been hogs that need to be slaughtered. I will quote one of my most favorite presidents, who unfortunately I was too young to serve, but I did always admire him, and that was General Eisenhower, who warned us when he left, beware of the military-industrial complex. He repeatedly said that. This is a great man who was exceedingly modest, who was exceedingly careful of the American national security. And every week, he literally, Alex, would call up the Pentagon to make sure the generals didn't blow out their staff or promote things and create units that didn't exist. That's the type of generals we had and people who cared about a country. We don't have that now. What we have is Disneyland on steroids. And what's worse is that Disneyland is killing our heroes, our American women and men and young people who are going out to die for civilian orders that are being used and manipulated by a president who's never served our country, has a questionable background in many, many places, forget the birthing issue, and has civilians around him have all been questionable in their capability, and we're all recruited from a questionable predecessor, either Carter or Clinton, who himself was also a sociopath. So we have three sociopaths in line, and I use it not in a diagnostic term, but in a very simple term. You have Clinton, who lied and prevaricated. You have Bush Jr., who lied and prevaricated. And now you have Obama. Now, if we have three in the low, we got a problem here, America. This problem isn't just with the individual, the Republican and Democrat. This problem is with the American people. We have to decide this is enough. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, liberal, or conservative, it's irrelevant.
Sir, let me stop you because...
Alex Jones.
Absolutely, because we have limited time, and obviously you're going to be back with us a lot.
What happened with... the issue now, what happened is, if I didn't know which unit of the Special Forces, and I've worked with Special Forces over 30 years, and part of it, I was involved in development of Delta Force, because in the beginning of hostage negotiating, we didn't have a comparable unit to the SAS. One of the concerns that I had, and I said, if I think any unit's going to be sent in there on the basis of publicity, and believe me, I have a lot of respect for the men and women who serve in the Navy and in all Special Forces, but particularly I work with the military, Army, the Special Forces, which, by the way, you have never heard anything about. You have never heard about any of the Army men who I know and the units that I specifically know, nor will I tell you of the men and women who are in the Army and they're serving this country, and they've never had a movie about them. They've never had a story about them. Yet today, I would have sworn, and I said to Alex Jones beforehand, if I had to predict which unit was going to get the biggest publicity, and if I were Admiral Mullen, who's concerned about his publicity and the publicity of the Navy, because they have no goal whatsoever right now strategically, I would have said they would have used the SEAL Navy team. Now, think about it. You use a SEAL Navy team on the ground from Afghanistan to Pakistan. It makes no sense. And then to go on the news and to say that we are so great, but we are so secret, it is an inherent contradiction. When you're secret, you are secret. There's a reason why I don't have a picture, because I'm not that good looking. There's a reason why I really don't care about what people think about it, because I want to do my everyday life in America. I don't need to promote my narcissism. I don't need to promote who I am or what I am. It's already difficult to pronounce my last name, Pieczenik, and by the way, that's been my secret to success overseas, because nobody could spell Pieczenik, including Noriega. But let's go back to the Navy SEALs. They really have to question what they did and what happened.
Well, let me stop you, Doctor. Doctor, there's been some major breaking news, Dr. Pieczenik. Are you there? Okay, great. Obviously, this morning they came out and said his daughter, who they have at a military base in Pakistan, who was left there, and he has all these wives, all these concubines, all this made-up cutout, just like they told us that, you know, Pat Tillman was killed fighting Al-Qaeda, and it turned out they just murdered him. Right. Or the same thing with Private Lynch, with Bruckheimer on record producing it. If folks don't know about that, BBC admits it. They're now announcing that, oh, not only did bin Laden not use his wife as a shield, not only did he not shoot at them, now they grabbed him, took him out, and then shot him somewhere else, and they just keep changing it. And then this SEAL Team 6, as you know, is the most secret of the teams. It has other teams associated with it. That's why they use that team, so that other SEALs are ignorant and can never, you know, discover that it didn't happen. And you're breaking down what teams you think are involved, what happened. Obviously, it's theater. He's been dead for 9+ years, 10 years. But and they're creating this.
Let me tell you a true story. Let me just so your audience understands this. I worked with Special Forces for over 30 years. Not particularly with SEALs, but I did have an episode with the SEALs. I'm not degrading the SEALs. I think there are very good men and women who are in the SEALs. But let me tell you the history of the SEALs as I know it. Under the Reagan administration, I was involved in the invasion of Grenada. The only men we lost on a raft were SEAL member teams heading into Grenada. Now, you tell me how 4 to 6 SEAL members drowned on a raft heading into Grenada. The only members of any special forces I have ever seen in the movies, on television, so promoting themselves like the FBI loves to promote itself, and it had a history where it was totally dysfunctional in international crisis management and in terrorism, because I worked with the FBI. They never shared their intelligence. They never shared their information. Remember, they were the ones who flew out Osama Bin Laden but didn't say a word. Is, again, whenever you see self-promotion of a particular unit in the U.S. government, you have to question it as an American citizen. Now, I'm not degrading those people who go through the SEAL unit and are on the teams. These are brave men and women. I'm questioning how they're being manipulated and used. I'm questioning an Admiral Mullen, who's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who's already made judgment mistakes by giving a civilian Medal of Honor to another sociopath named Greg Mortensen, who claimed he was in Pakistan, and then I reprimanded them for doing that, and immediately he was seen in terms of a statesmanlike attitude, and I say he should resign now. He should resign, the SEAL team should resign, and every member who has been involved in this contrived, disgusting, degrading PSYOPs operation should resign.
All right, stay there, Doctor. We got a break. We come back as a PSYOPs expert, decipher why it's a fraud for us, and we'll get into some other important issues.
We're on the march. The empire's on the run. Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.
Hundreds of nations have fallen to tyranny in the last century alone. This is our last chance to not relive history.
As they're finishing off this agenda, they'll be pulling the rug from underneath Americans at home.
I have tremendous influence on our president and Congress, and they really are calling the shots.
I think it's incumbent upon all of us as American citizens to pay attention.
Fall of the Republic identifies the enemies of our nation, the criminal offshore cartel, hell-bent on destroying sovereignty, and on its ashes constructing world government.
Tim Geithner, Bernanke, they're arsonists. They're asking for more matches. And the Congress is saying, who do we make the check out to?
Today seems like nobody does care. And right now in Washington, D.C., we have seen a fall of the Republic.
Get your copy of Fall of the Republic on DVD at